Jets trade talks are really starting to pick up as a brand new report from Elliotte Friedman as well as other reporters has dropped, revealing some huge insight into what Kevin Cheveldayoff's trade plans will be. We're going to break down those reports as well as discuss a new target that has been revealed that has Jets fans fired up. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. Before we get into it, if you're part of the 70 or so percent who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jets and daily NHL content over at Hattrick HQ. So make sure to smash that subscribe button. Thank you guys for your continued support. If you're a part of that 28% who are subscribed, thank you very much. We're on the road to 12,000 subscribers over on Hattrick HQ. We're growing crazy, and over here on Jets Digest, we're approaching 1,000 subs. But Darius, the Jets are doing pretty good. They desperately need some help as the trade deadline approaches, and some new targets have been revealed. And most importantly, it is going to be a guy that is pretty interesting. Let's start right here. There's a bunch of different reports. So Elliotte Friedman says they think they may be looking for a center as well as a defenseman, and that has led talks and some rumors to circulate surrounding a New York Ranger. Colin Lindgren talks to the Post about trade rumors. It's tough. It's kind of a first for me. Obviously, it's hard. I don't want to go anywhere, and obviously referring to Ryan Lindgren. This is an interesting guy, Darius, and I'll let you kind of start discussing this. You can see here, it's January 25th, now it's the 28th. The Jets are first in the Central Division by 8 points, and they'll be able to add around $11 million worth of players. Might want to bookmark these trade boards. The Jets are in a very good spot when it comes to cap space, when it comes to position in the standings. And now they have an opportunity to add some big-time players or some smaller guys that can help them as they prepare for a cup run here.
Going to be a very interesting trade deadline for the Winnipeg Jets. They have a ton of cap space. Look at this deadline cap space heading into the trade deadline. So they can go out and spend quite a bit at this year's trade deadline to get a couple pieces that they need. And we know for sure, like Elliotte Friedman just alluded to, like we just showed on the screen, that, they're looking for a defenseman. They're looking for a center. We've known for a long time so far this season. We've been making videos since the beginning of this season. And I mean, they've been looking for defense help in that regard. We don't know exactly who's going to be moving out, but I would imagine that they just want to shore up the defense, add another piece on defense. They have the cap space to do that. Now, there's a name flying around in Ryan Lindgren. Obviously, there was this column in the New York Post by Larry Brooks, and basically Lindgren went on to say that, he's only ever wanted to play for the New York Rangers, and he doesn't want to move on from the New York Rangers, but that doesn't mean that the Rangers are not going to move on from him, and it is time. So Ryan Lindgren's a very interesting case. He's a guy that could come into the Winnipeg Jets lineup, play top 4 minutes, and play them very well. He's a great defenseman. His body is breaking down a little bit, even though he is pretty young, but it's because he puts his body on the line. So Rangers fans like to say, he's injury prone, all this stuff. Not necessarily the truth. I mean, maybe to a degree if you want to look at it that way, but he's blocking pucks. He's eating shots all the time in playoff games. He's the type of guy you want on your team for the playoffs. So I think it'd be a very interesting option for the Winnipeg Jets. He comes in at about a $4 million cap hit. So again, he would be a rental. Maybe the Jets could look at re-signing him if they want, but even just to use him as a rental, I think it's a great piece. He wouldn't really cost that much this year. So I think it's a very interesting piece for the Winnipeg Jets when looking at defensemen, because we've looked at a ton of options already, Nick, like Rasmus Ristolainen and a couple other guys. I feel like this is a guy, while being a left-hand shot, could come in, play top 4 minutes if need be. And if he doesn't, if he's playing in your top 6, that's a pretty good team if you have a guy like Ryan Lindgren in your top 6.
Yeah, I mean, he's also young. He's only 26 years old. So if the Jets want to maybe use him and next season, after this season, work on an extension, that's something that I'm sure, again, it's in theory harder for the Winnipeg Jets to re-sign some guys. They struggle attracting big free agents. But again, players who come in, some of them like to stay. Connor Hellebuyck, all these guys, Mark Scheifele. But something to go over here. This is from a Rangers fan. Ryan Lindgren was a warrior. He was fantastic at his peak. The Rangers would have not enjoyed as much success they did without him. Notice the use of past tense in that sentence, though. I will appreciate Ryan Lindgren when he's gone, but there's no future with him. And as you start to look at what their blue line currently looks like, you mentioned it briefly. Obviously, Morrissey, DeMello, Sandberg, Pionk. That top 4 is pretty locked in. Hayden Fleury, Logan Stanley. We've seen some things, of course, Colin Miller. There's a lot of areas where they can improve. And again, the report from Elliotte Friedman was that they're looking for a center who we'll cover in another video, but also looking for a defenseman. And that's because, this defensive core is very good, but you look around the NHL now, and there's a lot of teams with good blue line cores. And as you start to look at what is required in the playoffs, you obviously need a great blue line, you need great goaltending, and you need good scoring. The Jets have most of those. Some would argue they don't quite have the blue line that some of these other teams have. That's obviously a big question, even though, the Logan Stanley thing has kind of painted a pretty bad picture here. And then you look at the press box, you have Brad Lambert, Colin Miller, Ville Heinola. I don't know if the Jets are confident with their current blue line. And as you see here, the Winnipeg Jets are linked to defenseman Ryan Lindgren, and just multiple reports. And basically, there's an article that dropped. The trade deadline coming up in over a month. Rumors are circulating everywhere. In a new report, David Pagnotta revealed that the Jets could be interested in Ryan Lindgren, the New York Rangers defenseman, set to become a UFA. It'd be nice. It'd be surprising to see him extend his contract. So it's interesting. Makes a ton of sense. But I guess the question now, and if you're watching this, let us know down below. Do you think their blue line, as currently last year, Darius, as well, as currently constructed, is good enough if they don't make any additions, even though they are, according to Elliot Friedman? But for a while there, we weren't entirely sure or sold on the fact that the Jets were going to be interested in a new defenseman at the deadline.
Yeah, well, if we take a look at the lineup again, this is current lineup, right? They're dealing with some injuries, and they've been dealing with injuries all season. But if you look at the current lineup, Morrissey and DeMello, that's not going to change. We know that's a great first pairing. Pionk and Sandberg, they've been great. When Sandberg's been, not injured this year, he's been that glue guy for this team, and Pionk's been playing great with him. So again, that's a solid top four. But if you want to add somebody to the mix, like Hayden Fleury being there right now, I mean, that's probably not going to be, that's not best case scenario, right? If you were to add a guy like Ryan Lindgren there, right, and he was to play with Colin Miller, I mean, you have a great symphony of like left shot, right shot, left shot, right shot, so on and so forth, right? Throughout your lineup, and it would be solidified. And again, Ryan Lindgren is a guy who's been to multiple Eastern Conference finals. He knows what it takes to win. He is a smaller guy. Maybe you want a bigger guy like a Logan Stanley, but we've seen, right? Like most Jets fans see, being a bigger body sometimes it might pay off in the playoffs, but with Logan Stanley right now, it's a hockey IQ thing, right? Ryan Lindgren is a very smart player. He's a good player. He lays his body on the line. He's the type of guy that you would like for the playoffs. So I'm not saying he's going to come in and be the savior. He's not coming in as a number one defenseman, but if you were to add a guy like that for relatively cheap, because again, I don't think the Rangers are going to be able to get as much out of him as they thought, but I do think he is going to be moved off of. If they, if you are the New York Rangers, I believe that's going to end up happening. And that's the reason they signed him to the contract that they signed him to. If you're to add a player like that to, your 6D spot there, or, the last pairing there on the left side, excuse me, I think that would be a pretty good option for the Winnipeg Jets. And another thing that could just tip them a little bit over the edge. If you have Ryan Lindgren there instead of maybe a guy like Hayden Fleury, it makes your team better. I just believe it does.
Yeah. And again, you look at the blue line ages, you can obviously see it there. Like, they're not very old. And if this is a guy that it could fit right into their group going forward. Now, obviously, you wouldn't be trading for him with the assumption that you can re-sign him. But if you're able to do that, it's definitely something if he fits in well. Again, only 26 years old, 6 foot tall. And whether they pair him alongside Stanley, maybe they want to have Stanley in the playoffs for physicality. I don't think they're going to trade Logan Stanley as the deadline approaches. So you could always have him ready, have him available. If that's the case, you go up against a more physical team. When it comes to the assets, again, the pick that they're going to request is probably going to be interesting. You do have Ville Heinola, and I'm not saying he's going to be or that he should be a part of this deal necessarily, but you have him available for a potential trade. You have a pretty solid farm system. You have Brand Lambert. You have Braden Yeager. I don't think they're going to trade either of those guys necessarily, but you have a lot of things or picks as well that deal from. And ultimately, it's going to be interesting to see what the Rangers ask for surrounding Ryan Lindgren. And let us know down below what your priority would be regarding forwards versus blue line for this trade deadline. I think they're going to add both. Elliot Friedman says they're going to add both, and there's going to be a lot of new trade reports. So we're going to keep you up to date with all the latest news, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. And again, let us know what you would give up for Ryan Lindgren. And it's kind of crazy we're talking about the New York Rangers being sellers at this point of the season, but I digress. That's a conversation for another day. But thank you guys for watching. See you later.